Ivermectin is making headlines. One story said Oklahoma hospitals were overwhelmed with people overdosing on ivermectin. But wait, is that true? Hi, welcome to America Uncovered. I'm Chris Chappell. Please give us a like and hit that subscribe button to be the first to see all of our new episodes. So, ivermectin. It's fun to say, but what is it? Well, it's a drug used to cure diseases caused by parasites. Diseases like river blindness or head lice in humans. It's also used for heartworm in animals such as horses and cattle. And I'm conducting tests to see if it's useful against those parasites in the paparazzi. If you've been keeping up with the news lately, you've probably seen some headlines about ivermectin. Perhaps it was this headline about Joe Rogan, or this headline about Joe Rogan, or this headline about Joe Rogan, or this Puffington Host headline about Joe Rogan. But one of the headlines that has garnered the most attention recently is this headline: patients overdosing on ivermectin backing up rural Oklahoma hospitals' ambulances. Which is newsworthy, since the only thing that usually backs up rural hospitals in Oklahoma is choking on fried okra while riding a mechanical bull. That story was first published by a local Oklahoma news channel called KFOR. But then the story went viral. In fact, it was a super spreader, appearing in media outlets like the New York Daily News, Newsweek, The Hill, Rolling Stone, The Guardian, and the Puffington Host. It even made it onto Rachel Maddow's Twitter feed. It's no wonder the story went viral, really. The story has it all: drama, conflict, intrigue, and people doing something stupid that makes us all feel smarter than them. But it turns out it's not so simple, which means it's time for another edition of our segment, Wait, is that true? Are Oklahoma hospitals and ambulances being deluged, overwhelmed, and clogged up by people overdosing on ivermectin, causing people choking on fried okra while riding a mechanical bull to not get the treatment they need? Here's the original segment on KFOR from September 1st.
Dr. Jason McEllier saying patients are packing southeastern Oklahoma emergency rooms, taking ivermectin doses meant for a full-sized horse, believing false claims it could fight COVID-19.
The ERs are so backed up that gunshot victims were having hard times getting to facilities where they could get definitive care and be treated.
Something McEllier says is now backing up small-town ambulance systems, too.
All of their ambulances are stuck at the hospital waiting for a bed to open so that they can take the patient in, and they don't have any, that's it. But if there's no ambulance to come to the call. So some people taking inappropriate dosages have actually put themselves in worse conditions than if they had caught COVID.
Forget the gunshot victims. I'm more concerned about horses that can't get ivermectin for their tapeworms. Seabiscuit here is going to eat all my oats. But as this local news story gained national attention, hospitals reportedly affiliated with Dr. McEllier started releasing statements. Dr. McEllier works for an agency that staffs many emergency departments throughout the United States. So Dr. McEllier had reportedly worked in multiple emergency rooms in rural Oklahoma. Two of these hospitals, Northeastern Health System Sequoia and McAllister Regional Health Center, said they were not aware of any patients coming in with complications related to taking ivermectin, which is strange because I think you'd notice them. While the third hospital, Integris Grove Hospital, said they had seen a handful of ivermectin patients in our emergency rooms. Some of the hospitals seemed eager to distance themselves from Dr. McEllier, appearing to blame him for the misconception that their emergency rooms were not working as they should. Yeah, their emergency rooms aren't broken because of ivermectin. They're broken because everything in the U.S. healthcare system is broken. But as Reason magazine pointed out, McEllier never actually made the connection between ivermectin overdoses and backed up emergency rooms or ambulances on camera. McEllier mentioned patients taking inappropriate doses of ivermectin, and he mentioned emergency room crowding. But he never said the two were related, which all might explain why McEllier appeared on another local Oklahoma news channel on September 6th and said this.
That original story was just a little misquoted.
The story being picked up by national and international news organizations. We talked with the doc quoted in the articles.
As the story ran, it sounded like all of Oklahoma hospitals were filled with people who had overdosed on ivermectin, and that's not the case.
So the media put two unrelated things next to each other to make them seem like they were related? No wonder there was confusion. That'd be like me reporting the annual Met Gala took place and millions are dead. Hey, why does everyone think those two things are connected? That report went on to note the real reason that emergency rooms are suffering strain.
Mainly what's causing the hospitals to fill up right now is this Delta surge with COVID. So much more COVID-related than ivermectin overdose.
That information was corroborated by the Integris Grove Hospital statement, which said, while our hospitals are not filled with people who have taken ivermectin, such patients are adding to the congestion already caused by COVID-19 and other emergencies. So really, while the hospitals in Oklahoma are suffering congestion and ivermectin overdoses are happening, the COVID-19 Delta surge is really what is straining hospitals. In short, under scrutiny, the original story basically fell apart. We'll talk about what happened next after the break. Welcome back. Recently, a news story about Oklahoma hospitals becoming backed up with ivermectin overdoses went so viral, the story tried taking ivermectin to treat itself. But it turned out the original story just wasn't true. And now there's a new viral story debunking the original viral story. Makes sense. The story has it all: drama, conflict, intrigue, and the media doing something stupid that makes us all feel smarter than them. Reason magazine was one of the first to cover it. Then there was Business Insider, Lead Stories, Fox News, CNN, and the Puffington Post again. Even the Washington Post published an opinion piece on it. Meanwhile, most of the original media sources for the story quietly backtracked. The New York Daily News changed the wording in their article. Originally, the article stated that the sudden craze among COVID-19 vaccine skeptics to take ivermectin has caused an overwhelming amount of people needing treatment for overdosing on the drug across Oklahoma. Now that overwhelming amount of people has been changed to nearly a dozen. To be fair, nearly a dozen is an overwhelming amount of people when it comes to the number of people your husband Greg cheated on you with. To be exact, according to the managing director of the Oklahoma Center for Poison and Drug Information, Scott Schaefer, there were a total of 11 reports of people being exposed to ivermectin since the beginning of May. Not much of a craze, really. Most of the 11 people who were exposed to ivermectin suffered minor symptoms such as nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and dizziness, and were told to stay at home. Basically the same outcome as eating at Sizzler. Only 3 of the people were told to go to the emergency room, which kind of sucked all the oomph out of the New York Daily News version of the story. Meanwhile, the Rolling Stone article got a new headline and an update that noted that, according to the National Poison Data System, there were 459 reported cases of ivermectin overdoses in the entire United States in August, with no state-by-state data available. The update acknowledged that those numbers probably were unlikely to be a significant factor in hospital bed availability in Oklahoma. So it looks like fried okra and mechanical bulls are back on the menu, boys. Yeah! Rachel Maddow tweeted additional context, but without specifically acknowledging the original tweet was wrong. The Hills version of the story disappeared from their website entirely, and The Guardian added a note at the bottom of the article saying they had amended it. The headline stayed the same. You might want to rethink your wording there, Guardian. 11 people isn't much of a deluge. Deluge is overly dramatic even when talking about Greg. The Washington Post's Eric Wemple called all of these changes cowardly quarter measures at war with any self-respecting book of journalistic standards. Except, of course, this book of journalistic standards. And the original source, the local station KFOR, what did they do? They stuck to their guns. They added an editor's note to the article that said, "At no point was Dr. McEllier referring to every hospital in the state of Oklahoma, and our reporting did not make that claim." It went on to say KFOR TV's reporting regarding the pandemic, proper COVID-19 safety precautions, and effective treatment protocols has been fact-based, accurate, thorough, and consistent. But the wording wasn't the best. Unlike mine when I reported the Met Gala took place and millions are dead. I still don't see how people are confused by this. Now, just to be clear, it is true that both pharmacies and animal feed stores in some areas have seen increased sales of ivermectin. And it's also true that calls to poison control regarding ivermectin have increased in some areas, although some of the calls are just people asking questions about it. And certainly some high-profile people, such as Joe Rogan, are part of the reason for this. The same way Joe Rogan is responsible for the 5 million % increase in the amount of guys who ask, "Hey, have you ever tried DMT, bro?" But the idea that ivermectin overdose victims are filling hospitals, it's simply not true. So why did this happen? Why did a story that was false spread so far? We'll address that after the break. Welcome back. So a story about ivermectin overdoses in Oklahoma went viral, but then it turned out it wasn't, strictly speaking, true. But how did we get here? Reason magazine argues that it is yet another example of the mainstream media lazily circulating a narrative that flatters the worldview of the liberal audience without bothering to check on any of the details. Look, sometimes a story just confirms all of your previously held biases about a group of people, and you have no choice but to spread it immediately without doing any research of your own. What's that called again? No! It's called reporting. Ivermectin has definitely become politicized. Some right-leaning headlines are calling it a wonder drug, or miraculous, and making some pretty interesting claims about it, like that it is the sole reason that COVID cases in New Delhi are dropping, or that it could have saved millions of lives, or that it gives you wings. Meanwhile, people on the left have called it a debacle and a dangerous meme, and they have a habit of writing ivermectin off as horse paste or horse dewormer, even though it also has approved uses for humans. Ivermectin has somehow entered the culture war, with some asking if a drug can be right-wing. I think Oxycontin and hydrocodone might be right-wing, considering how much Rush Limbaugh loved them. There's so much culture war noise around ivermectin that it becomes almost impossible to figure out whether it is effective or not. Everything you see is either about pushing ivermectin or debunking ivermectin. It's a seething mass of confusion, and the media are just adding to it with every new culture war story, especially when the story is literally fake news. Ultimately, we in the press have only one lesson to learn from this Oklahoma overdose story. Telling people what they want to hear will get clicks every time. Which reminds me, America Uncovered is officially the first to report that ice cream tastes great, and you can also cure syphilis. Are those two things related? Who cares? It's the internet age. If people misinterpret it, we can always update the story later. So what do you think? Should the mainstream media do better fact-checking? Can a drug be right-wing? Let us know in the comments. And remember, America Uncovered is supported mainly by viewers like you. So head on over to our Patreon page, contribute $1 or more per episode so we can keep making great content for you. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching America Uncovered.